and welcome to Hosta La Vista, the podcast where the shade is cool, the leaves are lush, and friendship's perennial. We are your hosts. I'm Betsy Peterson.
And I'm Mandy Olson.
Two hobbyist sisters who love this plant as much as you do.
Join us each week as we dig into all things Hosta, the plant affectionately known as the friendship plant.
In the world of hosta hybridizing, there are names that gardeners recognize on tags tucked beside variegated foliage in shade gardens across the country. Behind those names are the hybridizers, the quiet artists of the perennial world, blending color, texture, form, and resilience into plants that capture attention and stand the test of time.
Our guest today is a retired medical doctor who has made a distinct mark among them, not just through clever naming, but through rigorous selection and truly standout cultivars. You may have encountered his work in collector circles or even in your own backyard. The bold contrast of Bo Jackson, the unexpected flair of Bogus Dude, the excellence of Bohemian Queen, Bobo Fett, the sweet simplicity of Beau Bells, or the beauty packed into Beau Brummell. Each one bears his unmistakable creative signature, his name, if you listen closely enough. Please welcome noted Hosta hybridizer, Dr. David Bowe.
Welcome, David. We are so happy to have you on the pod.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Let's start at the beginning. How did you first get into hostas? Was there a turning point where hybridizing became more than a simple hobby for you?
Yeah, I started by taking cuttings of my mom's plants, which were undulata aramina, that were growing like wild, of course, all over her yard. And I had bought a new house, so I needed to landscape it, and I was trying to get any plants that I could get from anyone that I knew for free, and that one happened to grow incredibly well. And so I got excited that I could grow something so well, looking at other things. And I moved to Chagrin Falls after that. I was in Shaker Heights at that time. I moved to Chagrin Falls. That yard was a complete disaster. It had been let go for maybe 20 years. No one had done a thing in it. The lady hadn't lived there. So we had a blank slate. When we took off an addition in the back, an old double porch on the back of the house, and put in a patio, we had a great place to plant all kinds of things with some big trees all around. I started looking for plants to put in, and I was not accustomed to buying perennials, but I really liked the idea of getting a perennial that you can plant one time and it would come up every year. And I had a medical practice in Chagrin Falls, and one of my patients named Linda Miller, who I'm still friends with, had a collection of hostas, which was the biggest collection of hostas I'd ever heard of. She had 45 different kinds. Those of you who collect hostas now realize that that's laughably small. But to me, that was amazing. And she invited me to come to her house and see her garden. And when I was there, she says, "Oh, you got to just take some pieces of these plants home with you." So I think she gave me 7 plants that day. One of them was stiletto. There were a couple of plants that she didn't want to divide up, and I didn't understand why. One was Great Expectations, and the other was Francis Williams. And I came to understand later that if you cut those plants, they're going to suffer for years afterwards. So I decided, well, I'm going to have to find out if there's a place I can buy those. And then I found out that Peter Rue, a famous hybridizer and founder of the American Hosta Society, only lived 15 minutes from where I lived, and they had a nursery they called Homestead. So I went there, asked her about these plants. She gave me some advice that I maybe shouldn't even try growing Great Expectations. Of course, that didn't deter me. So I bought that one and killed it, like most people do. Francis Williams, I think she recommended something else because it has a desiccation burn in the edge, which I didn't really care about. And I think I bought that. And then I started looking at garden centers around all over the place to see what else was available. And I found out that Home Depot had maybe 5 or 6 different kinds, and maybe Lowe's had 5 or 6 different kinds. And then I would go to other nurseries and they'd have 5 or 6. And pretty soon I realized that it didn't hurt that much to buy a plant. And so I started buying them up like crazy, but I put a limit at my purchases that are around $7 or $8 a piece. I wasn't going to spend more than that. So I had, thought I had a limit on it. Sometime in those years, I went to the Hosta weekend event held by the Roos at Homestead, and they had featured a Hosta hybridizer coming in to talk about his plants, who I had never heard of. His name was Mark Zillis. Mark came out, and as he did it not every year, but he would come out for 2 days, on a Saturday and a Sunday, and he would give the same speech. So the day that I was there, he brought all kinds of little samples of new hostas that were coming out of Q&Z nursery that were sports of other plants that already existed. And around that time, I had gotten a hold of his book, which was the Hosta Handbook, a little spiral-bound, narrow book, and I'd started reading about it. And I had some plants in my yard that I didn't know what they were, and I started becoming interested in identifying what they were. So I started recognizing that these plants he brought with him that day were mutations of plants I was already familiar with from reading the book. And I thought that was really great. And I got really excited about that. And at the end of his talk, he said, "Is there anybody here who would be interested in learning about hybridizing?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And the thing that struck me of what he said that day, because I had the impression in my head is, well, it's going to take years for you to know whether you have anything in hybridizing. I'm not sure if I want to invest that kind of time. But that, as he was saying this thing about hybridizing, he says, "Well, in 4 days, whether you got something or not." I'm going, "What? 4 days? What are you talking about?" He says, "Yeah, the flower's either going to fall off or it's going to form a seed pod."
Oh,
And I thought, man, that's really not, that's some instant gratification there, you know? So I decided I would give it a try. And I took some plants and did some crosses. And I just started crossing whatever I could get my hands on. And as I was trying to build up my collection, I just would cross things that didn't look much like each other that happened to be flowering at the same time. And that's kind of how it got started.
That's
that's really cool.
fascinating.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I think Mandy's head is just spinning right now, right? Like you've got all these questions, right?
Well, I've only been doing this for 3 years now with the hybridizing, but I've just purchased seeds. I haven't actually tried crossing, and right now I'm looking outside my window, and there's probably at least 60 flowering right now, and I thought, oh, that'd be really fun to do. But anyways, okay. Was there a particular hosta or hybrid that make you think, yes, I really want to do this seriously?
Yeah, I would say that the first one that I thought was really cool, that I had success with, and I was taking pictures with my new digital camera in those days. It was a brand new thing to have a digital camera. I had a plant called PD Gold Flash, which was a little yellow centered, kind of flimsy, very small plant, and I had gotten a hold of nigrescens. And so I took nigrescens pollen and I put it on the flower of PD Gold Flash. And lo and behold, 4 days later, I had a seed pod starting. I was so happy about that. Took pictures of that little seed pod, and I saved it. And that seed pod produced several different seedlings that I hung on to for a while. But the one that I liked the best, I named Mercy Beaucoup. That was a yellow, so it had the yellow from the PD Gold Flash, and it had the cupping shape from the nigrescens. Stayed fairly small, but it was very upright and cupped. So it had exactly what I was hoping for, which was a upright cup-shaped plant with the yellow color. It even had some red in the very base of it too. So I thought, man, that's really a coup. And what am I going to call it? How about Boku Bucks? And I go, oh, I don't know if this is going to demand the kind of money that I'm thinking of when I say that. So I said, I got the Boku there. Well, how about Mercy Boku? So that is the name I stuck with, and I thought that was a great one.
So
Now, I just want to mention that as part of that process, I got a bunch of flimsy green plants too out of the same seed pot. So I got a lot of stuff I didn't like, as well as the one that I did like. So when you're hybridizing, you're going to throw away probably at least three quarters of what you grow from seed, because they're going to have all the bad traits, not the good ones.
Well, my very first year of growing, all I got was one packet of Gentle Giant open pollinated, and I kept them all just because I couldn't throw them away. You grew them; they're babies. You got to grow them all. So I have a ton of Gentle Giant seedlings out there that, after 3 years, some of them are kind of neat looking, and I'm not sure I would.
Big?
Yeah, they're getting real big. I just wondered, the green ones. So some green ones probably have some potential, right?
Sure, but I didn't really throw them out. They either died or they lived. So
See, I thought most
most of them
people
got
had to throw
neglected.
them out. Oh, okay. I
Most of
got
them
you.
just got neglected. And so the way I grew all in one big tray, and I would pull out the ones that I liked and put it in a cup and then
Oh,
nurture it. The other ones just got sat out in the garden somewhere. So
I got you.
there's things that I hybridize. I don't even know what they are. Or leftovers like that, but they never grew very well because they were
Sure,
crowded out and they weren't in good conditions.
sure. Well, you've registered some truly memorable cultivars, Bottle Rockets, Bow Bells, and now Beau Brummell. When you think about your cultivars from a broader view, what stands out about the process of making them?
Well, because of my habit of just looking at two odd things and trying to get something out of each of them,
Yeah.
I guess you'd have to just say it was very eclectic, because I didn't have a solid goal. I wasn't trying to get the best ruffles or the best red in the leaf or the yellowest or the bluest. I was just going for what traits were in my hands at the day that I would do the cross. And then if the seed pods grew, then I had something to work with. And so I just tried everything that I could. I tried putting Plantagenea pollen on everything. I put a lot of One Man's Treasure pollen on everything to try and get red petioles. So it's just as anything I could think of, and then what would grow. It's kind of how it worked out.
That's cool.
can I ask, how did you go about hand pollinating? Did you use Q-tip? Did you have a little brush? I mean, how do you
No,
go about that?
you can grab the anthers with one finger while you lift the pistil out of the way with your thumb, and
Oh,
it's easy to get one, but when you do it a lot, you can get all six of them at one time, and
okay.
you can also take the flower petals off if you want to. I found that doing it outdoors and with plants in the ground, you almost had to do that to keep the bees away or put a net over it. But eventually, I started bringing plants in pots into the house, so that there was no chance of bees getting to them.
Okay.
Interesting.
Last summer, Mandy, I had a bunch that flowered. I'm in zone 4B, so my growing zone is several weeks behind Mandy's. I had bought those little organza bags, and mine were going to seed when Mandy's were already done for the season.
Mm-hmm.
So for weeks, I had these little organza bags all over the garden,
Yeah.
and you got some good seeds out of a few of them, didn't you?
I did, yeah. Yeah, there's probably a good 5 that I'm watching from your seeds. Yeah, they're
You sent me two. There was one that, like, was it cookie crumbs that had made some good little babies?
I just kept them because I've never seen seedlings that tiny before. Like they're just, the size of your thumbnail. They're just tiny little seedlings. So it's kind of fun when you've grown, Gentle Giant and all these huge ones that these seedlings are tiny.
They were certainly really cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with open pollinate, who knows,
Yeah.
that's kind
Yeah.
of exciting too.
Yeah.
David, what are some of the traits or characteristics that you find yourself drawn to when selecting seedlings to move forward with?
Well, it has to be a strong grower, like making multiple divisions pretty quickly and having a nice habit, where it's nicely clumped and rounded. That's a great plus. Of course, a great blue color is great. A good yellow color is great. One of the things that I really focused on was getting fragrance. So Plantagenea pollen, which doesn't work very well, but when it does, you do get fragrant seedlings out of it. You can't put anything on Plantagenea, but you can use Plantagenea pollen, and it will carry fragrance into the seedlings. And oftentimes the plant will look a lot like Plantagenea. For the Bohemian Queen is one of those. That's a seedling of Plantagenea, and it's got ruffled edges, so it's an improvement.
I've got to go look that one up. Fragrance are my favorite.
Well,
Yeah.
that came up actually. You had mentioned, Mandy, that you love using the Plantagenea, but is not a very good breeder. How are you getting fragrant seed from Plantagenea that?
Well, the best thing with that is to collect the anthers at night when it opens up. If you wait till morning, a lot of times it opens during the night. It doesn't wait till morning to open. It opens up at night, and the bees will get to it immediately. So if you want that pollen, you got to collect it the night before, or put a bag over it, and then just putting it on as fresh as you can, and it's just luck of the draw.
Okay.
Yeah.
And doesn't always transfer fragrance. Most of the time it seems to, but I had some that were nice big flowers, but they weren't fragrant, and some the same cross that did get the fragrance. So it's just something funny about how it works.
Huh. That's interesting. So do you have a favorite parent plant?
Well, Plantagenea, One Man's Treasure is one that I've used a lot. I've used Neat Splash a lot to get it streaking because that's all I had at the beginning. Blue Jay, some of the blues are, just what I had really. So
sure, yeah.
So Neat Splash was one of the parents for your cultivar of Juanita, correct?
it came out to be a streaked plant. It was, I think it had designer genes in it. My mom attended the Philadelphia convention with us, where designer genes was the gift plant. If you went to the convention in, I think, 2006, 2005, maybe. But that was the second or third convention I'd ever been to. I went to Iowa in 2004, so probably 2005, designer genes. And so my mom came to that convention. And so that plant, Juanita, is my mother's name. She used to go by Jerry, but her birth name was Juanita. The day she died, no, I had the plant and it was blooming. So I decided, well, this plant, what am I going to do today? I don't feel right going about my normal routine. Mom just died in the middle of the night, So anyway, that plant I chose for her because it had the significance of the date and it had the significance of the background in it.
Sure.
And it's a nice little plant.
Oh, good.
Well, and it's a great way to honor your mom. I think that's wonderful. For listeners unfamiliar with the process, how does one go about registering a hosta? What's that journey like?
Well, you have to take notes on your plant, and you have to get it at the right time, and you have to measure things that you would never think of. So if you want to register a plant, it's going to probably take you a year or two to do it because you aren't going to have the data you need. So get a form and look at all you need. They want the length of the flower. They want to know what day the flowers open. They want to know what day they stop flowering. They want to know how tall is the scape, what color is the flower inside and out. Are the leaves glaucous or shiny on the back? What's the largest leaf, height, width? What are the number of vein pairs in the leaf? It's the dates on the flowers that are the trickiest, because if for some reason it doesn't flower the year that you want to register, you're out of luck for that year.
Wow.
But they are consistent from year to year. They will tend to bloom the same week from year to year. And within the garden, if you have 2 copies of it, they'll bloom almost the same day in different parts of your yard. You have to take notes. And I got a little notebook that I started putting data down in my notebook. I know you can't see this, but I brought it with me. But every page, I had a page describing a plant.
Wow.
What the first date that it bloomed? What name am I thinking of? What's the cross? What's my identifying? Gave them numbers, and then I described the leaf, and then They want to know things like, is the leaf folded? Is it wavy? Is it ruffled? Just things
Yeah.
you don't even think of. You want to look at those lists and just try to get all the data you can on any plant you want, just to get practice if that's what you want. Once you understand what all the terms are and what it means, is it rugose? People may not know what that means. It means, is it
Yeah.
full of rumples and bumples on it? Is it
Yeah.
shiny? Is it how shiny? Is it really shiny? If you
Yeah.
have what is shiny?
Yeah. Really.
Is it dull? Is it, so there's things that you get to know as you get more and more plants as to how to describe it. But then you have to have a picture of the flower. You have to submit it with a picture of the leaf, the front, the
Yeah.
back. You have to have a picture of the whole clump. So when you submit these things, they want a lot of information about the plants. Actually, doing the registration, if you have all the information, is very fast, but gathering the information is what takes all the time.
Huh.
Do they also want to see a mature clump of it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it could take 5, 6, 7 years for
Yeah.
it to
Well,
reach maturity.
most people recommend not registering it until it's, 4 or 5 years old. That's not an absolute requirement, but you hate to register a plant and then have it die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you've used the name. No one else can use that name. No one's ever going to see it in their garden. For me, I wanted to make sure that I made several copies of a plant before I registered it. I can divide it and not kill it.
Yeah.
That can be a problem too. So for me, I tended to register them after I had divided them a few times. So I didn't have one giant clump of anything because I couldn't stand not taking a piece of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That's interesting. How many hostas have you officially registered at this point?
Didn't count, but I think I have over 30. I made a list in order, and I made a decision to try to put a bow in the name when I started
Yeah.
doing these things. I started out sort of naming things with no particular pattern to it, but then I thought, you don't really name a plant after yourself. That's considered, tacky. So, and anyway, the first plant that I decided to put a name with a bow in it was bottle rockets. I had this plant that looked like it had fireworks coming out of it, the red petioles and the little purple flowers that looked like ladyfingers, like the firecracker kind of things. Well, there were already hostas names that had that reference. So the bottle rockets I thought of, and then I thought, oh, it's got a bow in it. Bottle rockets, that'd be a good name for that one. And that one grew like crazy. But anyway, then I started trying to put bow names on most everything. And at the end, I started thinking of David Bowie references because I thought that was pretty funny. And I have a sense of humor. So some of these things I just thought were funny enough that they would be catchy. So anyway, in the order of registration, Summer Rainbow was registered in 2010 by Chris Wilson of Halson's Gardens. He and I co-registered that one. Mercy Beaucoup, Cupid's Bow, Bohemian Queen, Bottle Rockets, Cinnabon, Bowflex, Purple Bow Tie, Beaujolais Wine, Limbo Rock, Bordeaux, Beau Brummell, Chic Boutique, Beau Bells, Peter Bowl, Boy Wonder, Winter Rainbow, Boba Fett, Bebop, Boysenberry, Bora Bora, Mambo, Herringbone, Lambeau Field, Beau Soleil, Bogus Dude, Boiling Hot, Bon Appetit, Botany Bay, Oxbow, Starboard Bow. Starboard Bow has two bows in it because it's board and bow.
Oh, yeah.
Then I did a couple of David Bowie references with Gene Genie and Spiders from Mars. And I have a lot of names that I didn't register. One of them that's pretty funny is Divine Bovine, which was suggested to me by my friend Bill Watterson, who's the cartoonist that did Calvin and Hobbes. He says,
Oh, yeah. I recognize the
he
name.
says you gotta name something Divine Bovine, which means holy cow. So
That sounds like something from Calvin and Hobbes.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
great. Oh, I
So
love that one.
so I have
Well,
a plant with that name. I don't have it in my notes that I registered it, but
I noticed that Beau Brummell can be found at a few specialty hosta suppliers now. So how do you go about getting your hostas to growers for sale?
I've been going to the national conventions for a long time, since 2004, and I got to know people, and I just started asking around, how do you do this? Mark Zillis, I got to know him. He had a TC nursery. Josh Spiess from In the Country Garden and Gifts, Rob Mortko, Bob Solberg, asking them what do you do? How do you do this? I met people through Facebook, the Hosta groups. And Bob more or less told me how he likes to introduce things, and he'll do a deal where he'll give you a percentage. It's all different, basically. You have to talk to different people and find out what they want as a way of doing it.
Okay.
Josh Spiess approached me about doing a chic boutique because he'd been seeing the pictures on Facebook. So he paid for that one to be tissue cultured, and then I got a royalty on it. And Bob Solberg has bought some plants and we just paid me a flat fee. But by getting to know the people and finding out how they're doing it, and
That's
they want to
great.
do.
That's great. Do you have many that have been tissue cultured?
Well, the first one was Summer Rainbow. That was tissue cultured in about 2010, I guess. 2014, it made it into the catalog at Halson's. We made 1,000 copies of that plant, and that went all over the world now. Summer Rainbow is great. It's a sport of winter snow with a real dark green center. It's a giant plant.
Wow.
Fantastic plant. And Beau Brummell was tissue cultured. It didn't tissue culture really well, but I think they got about 200 plants out of it, maybe. So that one went to TC. I tried to do Bogus Dude. It failed fairly badly. They got like 3 plants out of it that were true.
Oh.
That one was abandoned. Chic Boutique, we tried to tissue culture. It didn't make it through the process. So that one's super rare. That's the fragrant
Okay.
Man's Treasure times Planagenea, fragrant. Well, Bob Solberg's going to put Beau Derek in. That one's not registered. That was my first great Beau name that I haven't registered, but
I'm just thinking, for listeners who might not know what a TC is, can you briefly explain that?
well, tissue culture is where a lab takes your plant and they take a new bud that's forming in the fall usually, and they dissect it off the plant and they peel the layers off of it like an onion under sterile conditions, and they put it into a growth auger with vitamins and minerals or whatever the hosta needs to grow, and they can't have any bacteria or fungus in it or it'll kill it. So they have to get a piece of it, and then they put it in all these hormones. It grows, and then they take it out under sterile conditions, divide it up into 3 or 4 pieces, and do it again. Once they get that initial thing started with the sterile environment after the peeling part, that's the most critical part. Once they get that to work without any germs in it, they can then put it into test tubes, and they grow without roots in this auger, and they grow and grow and grow. They divide them again, and then if they get 3 divisions every few weeks that they can divide, or maybe a month at a time, it'll multiply fast, and within a year they can have 1,000 plants. If they keep going, normally they'll go shorter than that and get a few hundred at a time.
That's
And
fascinating.
then you give them hormones to put roots on them. When they're done with that, then they go to a grower to get them big enough to sell.
And that next step that's where the liner comes in, is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
liners are plants that have come out of tissue culture and are put into a very small little bit of soil, and they grow to the point where they don't need to be in 100% humidity anymore. They can get sent to a grower who will grow them to the size that people are willing to buy. I wouldn't want to buy a liner because they're so easy to kill. You got to have a greenhouse or some really good system to grow them.
That's fascinating. I tried to read up on this process, and Mark Zillis has some information out there, but for the average person like me, it's really hard to find information on how tissue culturing actually happens. So I'm loving this. This is great for just knowledge for me to know about.
Okay. This next segment we call Finish the Rhyme. We'll give you a short stanza about a hosta, and you try and guess the cultivar. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay. The stems are red, a quiet hush. It breaks the green with Garden Crush. That rosy leaf will make you gush. This new stunner here is...
First blush.
There you go. Good
You
job.
That was way too easy. All right,
yeah.
Here's the next one. It rises tall, a shining hull, a vase of silver, proud and full. Its leaves like whispers, soft and dull, bow down before...
Rosa Regal.
Regal. Very good. Yeah, you got it. We understand you now garden in a tropical climate. What's that transition been like for you?
In Florida, we can grow orchids super well, which we were never able to grow in Ohio, even though there are orchid clubs in Ohio. But down here, they just grow outside. You put them on a wire on a wall, and the roots just hang down. You spray them with water every morning, and they just grow. That's been cool.
Well, have you found any ways to successfully overwinter hostas in Florida?
I, for the first time, brought 2 hostas down and put them in the refrigerator, and it worked. So I decided to January, well, we're going to take call leaves off and put this in the refrigerator. I took all the dirt off of it, just rinsed it all off, put it in a plastic baggie with like a paper towel, and didn't seal it, but let a little air circulation. I put it in the vegetable drawer. I had 2 different plants. One was that summer rainbow, and a couple of those, and another one I call Beauregard. And we have a vegetable crisper in the refrigerator in our garage, which is a spare. And we put them in for 6 weeks, took them out, growing like crazy. So
Huh.
Wow.
it looks like it's a winner. But you
Wow.
can't have much of a collection if you got to refrigerate all your plants. So
I know. But it's neat though that you attempted that and figured out that as long as they had 6 weeks of dormancy,
well,
they're ready to go again. That's
what
pretty
I'd
cool.
read. That's what I'd read, but I was afraid to do it because I thought, well, I'm going to kill this plant.
So wait, do you put them in the refrigerator or the freezer?
Refrigerator.
Refrigerator. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, you could freeze them probably, but
Yeah.
they have to go dormant. They have to go fully dormant before you would do that. But I just put them in the refrigerator,
Wow.
and I did it in like January because they hadn't gone dormant. They're down here just warm.
Yeah.
I found that we since 2020 we started snowbirding back and forth. So I'd come down here in the winter, up there in the summer, and when I was down here at the end of the winter, I was not looking forward to going back up north because it was just so nice here all the time, and we were having fun growing these other things. And so we'd go up north, and the hosta thing got to be pretty much work, 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 and then go back to Florida. You had 3 months of nice weather, but the yard was a mess. We weren't there all spring to get it going. We'd show up on Mother's Day and the place was overgrown with weeds, and so we just worked like crazy. And so I found that when I was down here at the hostas, I really didn't even think about them. It's like I have so many things. I took up golf, and we joined a landscape committee in Florida at our HOA so that I could learn about palm trees and what does grow here. So I've really taken an interest in crotons, which you might not even know what they are. They're yellow, red, green leaved, thick leaved plants that you might find being sold for an indoor plant.
I say they're house plants here in Kansas.
House plants. Yeah, if you have them up there, they're house plants, right? But here they grow outside and people use them for landscaping, and they're very hardy and all kinds of different shapes and sizes. And then coleus, which I'm sure you have there. I started collecting anytime I could get a little piece of a coleus. I would root it and grow. So I have about 15 or 16 different kinds of coleus growing in my yard, and they grow really well.
Are they a perennial down there?
Sort of. In the hot summer heat, they tend to die. So you just take a cutting and keep it in a protected area, and you can keep going.
Are you currently working on any new hybrids or projects?
So I wanted to get into hybridizing orchids because I could see, what cool things you might come up with different colors, because the colors are unreal. They're bright.
Yeah.
Pinks and purples and yellows and oranges, and reds, whites, even black looking things. And so I learned how to pollinate an orchid, and I was able to get a seed pod to form. But seed pods on orchids take about 9 months to mature. If you compare that with a hosta, it takes about
Yeah.
6 weeks. And
Wow.
so you have a very long time to wait to get a mature seed out of it. And the seeds are like powder. They're
Yeah.
tiny, tiny white specks, smaller than grains of sugar. It's almost like powdered sugar.
Wow.
And in nature, apparently the wind takes these and they catch in the bark of the right kind of tree where it can germinate if it's in the right, if the presence of the right ingredients. And that could be a bacteria or a fungus or something that produces a hormone that it cohabitates with. So it's not something you can just grow in a pot. So to get a orchid seed, you have to send it to a specialist. And I have the name of someone because I asked for a quote for one that I had, and they charge $20 to put the seeds in the flask, and then you buy the seedlings that they grow out of that at $1 a plant with a minimum of 100.
Oh,
So you've got $120 invested in growing one
wow.
seed pod cross.
Wow.
Wow.
Now you can sell all of those babies, but you've got to grow them to a point where they'll at least look like they're going to flower, and that's going to take several years.
Wow.
So, and you don't know whether it's a great plant because you don't know what the flower is going to look like until it blooms. So that's going to take many years to do
Goodness.
that. So, I thought about, I would need a sponsor. I'm a retired doctor. I could afford $120 to do this,
Yeah.
but it'd be better to go with the orchid club. We have clubs, orchid clubs down here all over the place. We belong to two different orchid clubs. If you could agree to have them buy all the plants and figure out a way to grow them from a tiny little seedling into something that might bloom, I could do it. I could do it all day, but
Yeah.
then the club would sell them to members or wherever. But you have to have a greenhouse, and
Yeah.
these clubs are people like me. They just have a house and they collect plants.
Yeah.
So I got to know a hybridizer here who basically told me I wouldn't bother trying if I was you. But I wanted
Wow.
to learn. I wanted to learn what it was like to hybridize it to cross an orchid, and
Yeah.
I did it a couple of
Yeah.
times. It worked. I got seed pods. I got a little powdery seed, and then didn't do anything with it.
Wow.
So um, because it just
Huh.
if
Wow.
I'm going to spend $120, I'm going to make sure it's exactly the cross that I want, not just the first
Yeah.
one that I come up with. So
Yeah.
it's not really feasible to do that.
Yeah.
So I've tried Croton Crotons. I was able to cross two different Crotons together, but I only one day was able to get two different kinds blooming at the same time.
Oh.
So that's I don't have enough yard. I have a very tiny yard, so I got lots of Crotons all around, but they don't bloom very often. So one that I do have blooming, I can pollinate it with itself. I got tons
Yeah.
of seeds from that, but I got plenty of that. I don't need more of the same. So Crotons, I've learned how to cross, and I could grow the seeds because they're big seeds.
Yeah.
I did, I did, was able to grow an amaryllis seed that I
Oh.
found walking by the church. An amaryllis had gone to seed, and I just grabbed some seeds off the top of these giant, big flowers, right?
Oh
I
yeah.
planted them, and they grew. I've got 1 inch tall amaryllis plants growing in the back. I'm just trying anything I can. I mean, Florida is
Yeah.
so different from Ohio. The
So
ground here
different.
is
Yeah.
it's sand. The ground is basically sand. Imagine you're in Ohio in clay. You
Yeah.
want to pull up a weed, you better get a shovel.
Yeah.
Here, you
Yeah.
just reach down and just pull on it, and it comes out. Or if
Wow.
you want to plant something, you'll take some of these woody plants. You can just cut a branch off, stick it in the ground, in the sand, and if it's damp enough, it'll grow roots.
Oh
It's
my
amazing.
gosh.
So
Crazy, huh?
I got a gardenia. I couldn't believe it. I got a gardenia to do that.
Oh, really?
That's
So
amazing. Our
yeah,
grandfather was a grape rancher out in Lodi, California, similar soil out there. And same experience, you could just get anything to grow. Took no effort of any kind. So very different from the Midwest here. So it sounds to me like you're able to transfer over some of the same skill set. That's probably muscle memory at this point for you between hostas onto other varieties of plants.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to hybridize coleus, for example. I haven't figured out how to. The flowers are so tiny. I don't know how you would know what you had. How would you put a label on one of those flowers? I have no idea. The flowers are quarter inch at the biggest.
Yeah.
I keep looking for interest opportunities to do stuff like that. I'm experimenting all the time with what I can grow, different plants. And we joined the local Boca Raton Garden Club, so we donate plants to them. So I'll grow it. Well, that worked. Here, let's take it to the garden club and they can sell it at their plant sale. Just a lot of new things. The gardening interest is still here. The hosta things, I just you can't really grow them here unless you do that cold thing. They sell So Sweet down here, and they call it the sun hosta, and you can buy it at Home Depot. You can plant it, and it'll grow for a while, maybe a year, and then they just die.
So they just treat them as annuals down there,
Yeah,
huh?
right.
Isn't that interesting?
Isn't that
I
funny?
saw guacamole for sale at Home Depot here.
Oh,
Wow, that's nice, but
yeah.
why would I kill a plant that I love?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
It's so funny because your perennials are my house plants and,
Right.
vice versa. I'm thinking amaryllis, we give those to each other at Christmas time to grow the whole month of January. And you're
Yeah.
so excited to have this big red,
Yeah,
blue.
yeah, they grow in the ground here.
Isn't
Yeah.
that crazy?
That's amazing. Totally
Yeah.
different growing zone. What zone is that, by the way?
9 or 10,
9 or
maybe.
10. Okay.
We're not the tip. We're not Miami. We're 1 or 2 zones north of that.
Okay.
But it
Okay.
never gets. It doesn't normally get to freezing. It can get down into the high 30s on a coldest night of January, February.
What advice would you offer to a home gardener who's just starting to cross hostas or any plants in their backyard?
The most important thing is learn how to do record keeping and be prepared to grow a lot of plants. That was something that I kind of struggled with early on. Is I didn't have a way to grow the seeds very well. I didn't have grow light system like I did later on. I didn't have a uniform size of cup because I didn't want to spend any money on this. I just think, oh, this is just a hobby. I'm just doing this for fun. Well, eventually you have to invest a little money in having uniform size lights and trays, and because the plants all have to grow at the same time under the same conditions. So you have to get a little bit scientific about it. It's nice if you can have a mentor who will walk you through it or show you how they did it. But best, and with Facebook, you have access to all that kind of thing. Every hybridizer that I've ever known has been super happy to share their techniques with other people and learn from other people. It's really nice. But keeping track of what crosses you did, for me, I want to know the two parents. I think it's really cool when you have a hybrid where you can see the traits from both parents. To me, that's much more important than just having a really cool plant that someone grew from an open pollinated seedling. Like I had plants that grew in my yard. It just popped up, from seeds that blew there in the wind.
Yeah.
Fabulous looking, big, strong, green hostas. Like, wow, I wish I had hybridized this one, But to me, it just didn't have the value of knowing. It was frustrating to me to not know the name of a plant. So record keeping, either in a notebook or writing it down, and the other thing is make sure you have pens or markers that don't fade in the sun. It's another mistake that's easy to make.
Very true.
Getting magic markers they make industrial strength, but you do need to test these things out. I found that using pencil on and vinyl blinds was my best kind of a plant stake. But birds pull them out, so we usually want to have one underground and one above ground. But I would go to Walmart and buy a fresh set of mini blinds, immediately tear them apart and get myself about 200 plant tags out of it for $5. It's
That's
cheaper
an
than
interesting
plant,
idea.
Yeah,
cheaper
I
than
like
plant
that.
tags.
Huh.
Yeah. At firstly, I started trying to scavenge, used ones that people were throwing away, but of course that didn't work. There aren't enough people throwing them away to keep up with what I was using.
David's dumpster diving.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. You can see a pattern here, I'm sure.
I love it.
All right, Dave. Well, it's time for our segment we call This or That. So you
Okay.
don't think, you just say the first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready? Which is worse, slugs or deer?
Slugs are worse because you don't know where they are. You know they're there, but you don't know where they are. By the time you realize you have a problem, it's too late. And that's true with deer too. But
Yeah.
deer, we put up fencing to keep them out. They're big enough to be sure you don't have them coming in.
All right, next one. Mini clump or full-on behemoth?
A mini clump would be my preferred one, and the reason for that is that I have never been particularly good at growing the hostas once I make them. I've been so jealous of great growers, and particularly if you may have never been to see Van Wade's hostas down in the Mansfield area in Ohio, but his plants were about twice as big as anything I'd ever seen anywhere. And anybody that goes there, well, they've gone out of business now, but I mean, they'd have a strip tease that was like 10 inches long, whereas mine would be 5 inches. They would be enormous, and you just couldn't believe it. And they fertilized them like crazy with all kinds of horse manure or whatever. But I didn't invest in fertilizing techniques. I was always on to get the next one, make the new one, make the new one, make the new one. Okay, that one needs a place, stick it over there. What's new? And so, yeah, a good growing mini is something that I found achievable.
Okay, color breakthrough or shape revolution?
I would go for a shape revolution. The color breakthroughs, we pretty much know all the colors except red in a hosta leaf. Shapes will surprise you. You don't really have to try for them. You just keep doing it enough. There's something about hostas that makes them recognizable. It's hard to define when you see it, you know it. And it's the shape of the clump, it's the shape of the leaf, it's the length of the petioles, it's the proportion, the height, the width. There's something about the shape of the whole plant, besides the shape of the flowers or the shape of the leaves, that make it distinctive. It surprises you when you get it, and it can be so bizarre. They look at or curly fries or some of these things that I'm sure they weren't expecting.
Yeah.
Would you rather have seedling roulette or a sport jackpot?
Seedlings are my preferred plant by far, as opposed to a sport. I've got summer rainbow is a sport. Winter rainbow is the sport that it came from, which is a sport of winter snow. So we knew that plant was going to be amazing from day one. But we just got lucky. We just found it. And a lot of great sports are just found by accident. And so there really isn't any work or thought that goes into that. It's just having a good eye. But with a good seedling, you've planned out and you've had some idea what you were trying to do. So you get a lot of satisfaction out of having a plan and achieving it.
Okay, tetraploid or diploid?
I always was happy with diploids. The tetraploids I found to be slower growing, even though they might be thicker. I didn't find them to be any better for breeding. So I've never been a big fan of tetraploids. I do like seeing how the leaves change from like a June to a touch of class. They look significantly different. But as far as hybridizing, tetraploids didn't really do that much for me.
Okay.
Well, David, this has been a lot of fun.
It's been a pleasure having you on Hosta La Vista. And do you have any final takeaways that you'd like to share with listeners?
Yeah, the hosta world is one of the youngest frontiers in plant development, and so it's not too late to start doing this. I recognize that most of the people that had started the American Hosta Society were still alive when I started looking into this 20 years ago. How many things are there in the world in terms of growing plants or animals or whatever that haven't been around for hundreds and hundreds of years? This is something that's a relatively new field, and I felt as though I could make a name for myself by doing this. And I'm not really sure that I have, but I did try.
Yeah,
I
sure
put
you
my
did.
name everywhere I could.
Yeah, no,
But
that's great.
it feels like you're a big fish in a small pond if you go to these Hosta conventions and you rub elbows with the big names. You donate plants to the auction at the National Hosta Convention. You go up and talk to the sellers, the hybridizers, pick their brains. You get to know the rock stars of the hosta world, and they're very accessible. And if you like being a part of something where you can really feel like you're a significant spot in that world, this is a great place to do it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, for folks who want to see more of your cultivars or learn from your work, where should they go?
Well, you can go to the hostaregistrar.org and put my name in as a hybridizer, BOWE. It'll put in all my registrations. On Facebook, if you stalk me, David A. Bowe, Facebook, there is a file of my hostas in my photo albums. So if you want to look at some of my hybrids that weren't named or that I was just seedlings or whatever, you can look at those. And of course, you can contact me if you have any questions about them.
Okay.
Well, listeners, join us next week when we tackle another hot hosta topic with our amazing guests.
If you haven't already, please follow the podcast and like us on Facebook. And if you have a question or comment for the pod, or even your own unique rhyme you'd like us to use on air, let us know at hostalavistapodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Until then, thanks for listening and
Hasta la vista. I don't know. Is that what you're looking for?
no, that's perfect.